Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Butterfly Effect podcast, and today we are starting a brand new analysis series, and it is The Walking Dead Michonne. So those that are following the channel will have known that I streamed the game recently. Well, this is the analysis series. This is the nitty gritty where we talk about the choices and have a bit more in-depth chat about our thoughts on the game. So what we're going to do this series is we're going to start with the choices themselves, talk about them a little bit, and then we'll go back to some other talking points. So we'll start off with the first one. Literally opening scene, we see Michonne. She's, cutting through some trees, good girl. I'm fed up with trees. And but she ultimately goes to end her own life. So, in your playthrough, do you remember what you did?
So I don't fully remember because, full disclosure, I think I played this game. I think it was after you because you're the one who got me to play it. But I think it might have been a year or two after it came out. So it's we're talking nearly a decade here. So a lot of these choices will be, this is probably what I would do now, what I imagine I would have done kind of thing. I'm pretty sure I dropped the gun. I was I doubt anything would have happened because it's the character. Michonne is the game is named after the main character who's playing as. So I'm it's not going to be fatal. So I think I was just pretty blasé assuming it'd be a nothing choice, but I ultimately picked the drop the gun one.
Yeah, as we know, obviously in our playthrough, I let the fans decide, and they picked to pull the trigger, and then a gentleman named Pete come along and stopped us from doing that. But yeah, as we can see, mate, even if you just go to drop the gun, not a hell of a lot changes. You're still going to run into Pete, and the game's still going to carry on, isn't it? So we move on to the next choice, the infamous choice. How did you enter the abandoned ferry? Was it via the window or the ladder?
You know what, I have a vivid memory of this, and I remember taking the window on my blind playthrough, which is interesting again because on the stream we voted ladder. But I think this, because I always brought up this choice to you, we always talk about this choice, don't we? I think this is the choice where I ultimately started learning when I was younger that Telltale games might be a bit more linear than they seem. Because obviously we know Telltale was a lot stronger back in 2012 kind of thing. And it was Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, 400 Days, Season 2, and I was fully hooked on these games. And when this game sunk in, I think it was a little bit where I started to veer off a little bit, okay, there's this... I certainly had question marks around this choice, and if these were the quality of choices we were going to be getting for the rest of the game, mate.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I've got it written down here. I mean, you take the ladder, you do a little bit outside, you open a box to get in, don't you? And then if you take the window, you're just not doing that, and you go in, you maybe see some dead bodies, and you're thinking, what's going on here? Who's shot all these people? But you ultimately still have come across, the cafe entrance where you've got the walker strung up, haven't you? So, yeah, it's perhaps a game that, even at the time, I didn't rate that massively, but I think as it ages, especially with some of the games that we play now, where the branching's more sophisticated, it's not going to age too well. But who knows, maybe there's someone out there listening that likes the game, so let us know in the comments. So we're now going to go to the next choice, which is, did you ambush Randall in the storeroom? Take it away, mate.
So I decided not to, and it's very similar to when I played Walking Dead Season 2, because when Carver imprisoned me, I chose to be compliant when I was in the back of the lorry kind of thing as well, and I didn't want to kind of upset anyone. So yeah, I just thought best course of action. I think we're going to have an opening. I think it's going to be later, but now's not the time. So I tried talking Sam out of ambushing Randall.
Yeah, and it was the exact same choice that we made in the stream as well, but just to have a look at what the opposite would have looked like. So Michonne ambushes Randall. So Randall enters the room and Michonne attacks him. Sam goes to assist, only to be knocked unconscious. Michonne headbutts Randall, but she's unable to sufficiently dodge Randall's counter. He then forces Michonne to Norma. So basically the ambush goes wrong. Yeah, there's not even that much to it. So again, the choices showing themselves not to be very sophisticated here. The fourth choice, did you sell Greg out to Norma? This is an interesting one because I actually didn't remember at this point, when I was doing the stream, whether it would have an impact on Greg's life or not, because like Liam said, it would have been like best part of a decade since I last played it as well. And the only things that I could really remember out this game were, the shipyard place, I think it's called Monroe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe like 1 or 2 deaths that occurred in it, and maybe like her little nightmare bits. But in terms of like specific characters, I was very much in the dark on. But yeah, what would you have done, mate? Or do you remember what you did in your blind playthrough?
I don't have a Scooby what I did back in the day, but I guess if I was playing it now, I didn't owe Greg anything, so I actually might have been a bit rude here. I might have just been like, it's him. Because, you would be telling the truth.
Yeah, and I mean, what have we got here? I was in the majority. It says you and 57.8% of players shared the blame with Greg, which is surprising, considering that in my playthrough I was being savage for the most part, so maybe there was a rare bit of kindness on my part there. And then moving on to the final choice, did you let Sam shoot Zachary?
I think for me, I think I let Sam shoot Zachary, because obviously a brother just died. I feel like, yeah, she's owed a kill. Let's give it to her.
This is perhaps, because we're actually dealing with someone's life here, yeah, I've got to say that obviously from the stream did the exact same. But I've got it, well, it's written down here. If you prevent Sam from executing, you tackle her, wrestle the gun from her hand, knocking it towards Zachary, and then he looks at the gun as the episode ends. And I've got to admit, I've not gone back to see what happens if Zachary stays alive. If it's going to be one of those ones where he ultimately dies anyway, maybe in the shootout later on in the house in, future episodes or what have you. Probably would be in this case, considering it's a Telltale game, but I'll have to get back onto that one. But that concludes the choices of episode 1 In Too Deep of The Walking Dead Michonne. So I'll throw it over to you, mate. Is there any particular points that you wanted to bring up, or any areas of discussion you wanted to air or put out there?
Yeah, for sure. No, I've got a few things here that is worth note taking for this game. One thing I want to quickly do though is just go back to that choice, because if you want, I will sort of say now what I'm pretty sure happens, because I'm not 100% sure myself. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Zachary will have to die. So I think on one hand, it is really cool that the ending choice has some merit, because you'll get a different ending. It's literally who ends the episode with the gun, and that is quite the cool cliffhanger to go on to for the next episode. But I'm pretty sure it just ties it all up anyway, so you can question whether that's a bad ending because it leads nowhere, or if it is a good ending that probably was successful at creating suspense. So I'm not sure what you think on that one, man.
Yeah, the fact that the choice has merit, I absolutely like that. But I can't say I'm surprised. If he does then go on to die later on, then it is just almost like a rerun of, season 1 or whatever. But, it's to say that this is the least favourite of my Telltales would be an understatement. And I do hope that I'm not overly bashing this throughout this entire analysis series, but I do think it will lean slightly on the more negative side as I'll, go into my various points and things. And unfortunately, the choices aren't necessarily going to help with that. But this particular one, sure, if the guy stays alive at least for a little bit, I'm curious to see how much involvement he has, if he has much dialogue. But yeah, fair play on that particular one.
No, I do agree, and it is Telltale. So at the end, even if he could survive, it would be like Nick from season 2, where he's just in the background doing nothing, where he gets an off-screen death or something. So, yeah, no, I fully agree, and I lean with you. From memory, I thought the game was okay, but I really like the other Walking Deads, and this doesn't sort of even punch the standards that it got close to, and it's really weird. And one thing to mention is the length of the game, because it's episodic, right? So it's not just a 400 days where we're getting one thing, but it's 3 episodes, so you almost want to consider it one of the big games, and then it's just not even close to it. So, like, I don't know, like, are you with me where you would have preferred something a bit different away from the series? Like, something like a 400 Days, like a story built from the ground up?
I think so. It's almost like they went for something half, wasn't it? They didn't want to commit to
Yeah.
the full series, but they didn't want to commit to a DLC either. Like, I'd play 400 Days many a time over than this, I must say. Even like from, I know we're jumping a little bit ahead here for like future episodes, but even like the geography of the characters, it doesn't feel like they move that much throughout this game. It feels quite static, and when there are good bits, you think, oh, I want more of this. I wish there was a bit more of this sooner. And because of the short runtime, I feel like you've got to get the players into some action early. And that's why actually I think coming back to the beginning of the game, I was thinking, oh, this is good, you know, because you're establishing her character. She's obviously got, she's haunted by the loss of her daughters, but she's that, you know, she's got steely resolve. She's this badass with this machete. But then too much in this game, does it then just fall down into chatting to characters that, you know, don't really live long in the memory, and then before you know it, it's the end of the episode, and you think, oh, okay.
No, I do agree with you, and I want to mention the location which you brought up there, because you mentioned how we're static in those places, but like, I actually really like the maritime theme of Monroe. I thought it was quite a really cool concept of having like this villain HQ set like in an area with docks and boats. I felt that was really unique, and I don't know about you, but I feel like we left Monroe too soon, because there's like, spoiler alert, but like the second half of the game is almost like too static in same locations, right? While I feel like Monroe is a really cool place to have a bit more of.
I feel like Monroe probably should have been the end episode location, actually.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I think so.
that's essentially the villain's hideout, isn't it? Like, that's
Yeah.
where they're all gathered, and like you say, it is a cool place. Like, when you think about the previous seasons, obviously season 2, the one that had just been, you'd had Carver's hideout, you know, and then before that, I guess the characters were on the move quite a bit, but that was still early days into the apocalypse. So at least you've got something out on water that's a little bit something different on the eye. But yeah, like I say, you get moved away from it so quick, and I don't know. I think, yeah, it's almost like what we were saying before. Like, you just left a little bit wanting.
No, completely, mate. And then on top of that, I mean, like, we've got to mention it, Jack. Swimming walkers. That's what you titled the name of the episode. Did you find that bizarre?
I did, yeah. I did find it bizarre. And obviously, like I said in the stream, it's I've not watched the TV series and I've not read the comics either. So maybe I'm in a unique position here. I don't know. But suddenly, walkers swimming or walkers walking underwater. You know, I was just thinking to myself, like, did they come from the ferry? Like, did they just see the boat in the distance and have the brain capacity to go, I'm going to dive in the water and start walking towards them? It just seems far-fetched, and obviously it was a nice little jump scare. It was something that, you know, you're not going to expect, given the fact that, you know, that you don't see walkers on water for, you know, the first 2 games. But yeah, I think it was a bit far-fetched, but hey ho, you know, they just threw the kitchen sink at it with this one, thought anything goes.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of threw me off more, and like I was annoyed with, was they brought back the season 1, episode 1, where you throw like the brick at the tea Doug does, you know, when it gets the zombies' attention. But it's just the way there's this swimming horde, and then suddenly they're all like just chilling in the water while you're doing your dialogue with Pete and exploring the little, you know, the window or the ladder. And then suddenly, when it's convenient, the horde is going to come back at you again. And I'm never a fan of that trope, but yeah, they keep bringing it back. But one thing as well, mate, so like, I also don't want to trash this game too much, but one thing I will say is really concerning is that if you was to ask me what my favourite part of the episode was, you know, because there's a lot of good stuff, like the good voice acting, but it's bad if I tell you my favourite thing was the outro song. The thing that, like, it's the game at all. And I feel like if I say that out loud, which is like the truth, it probably doesn't like scream that this was an amazing episode anyway.
Yeah, you know what, you mentioned in music there. what did you make of like the little pre-title sequence that we get for this game?
You know what, actually, I really like it. I think it blends the comic art style really cool, especially throughout the menus, but they have it on this intro screen as well. We saw The Wolf Among Us did it with their intro, and I thought that was really successful. It's like a really iconic theme. This one has like, they've, obviously bought this song to put on this, and I think it's fantastic. So yeah, big fan of it, actually.
Yeah, I've got to say I echo that. I think it was a nice touch to like add the sort of the comic imagery. I think it does give the game its own identity, like in comparison to the others. And I feel like I think it's called Gun in My Hand, the song, but that seems to fit quite well with just like the general vibe of the game, and like obviously Michonne as the lead character. So it was a welcome surprise, and again it was something that I had forgotten, having played it previously and coming back to it. So yeah, maybe Wolf Among Us really kick-started something. Maybe they thought they'd lean into pre-title sequences in future games, and this was one that they did for Michonne as well. But yeah, at least there is a positive somewhere that we can pick out from it so far. I did want to bring you back, mate. Sort of beginning of the episode, we're on a boat, aren't we? And we meet Pete, Sadiq, Oak, and Berto. They're like the crew on the boat. I want your opinion on them. Like, what did you make of them as characters? And obviously, maybe not going too far into the future, but their impact on the overall story, in your opinion.
I just didn't really connect with them. It was cool with Oak that we got a Brit on a boat. That was kind of really awesome to hear, and I did buy some of their chemistry. But I do think at the end of the day, the problem is that two of them we barely speak to. One, we played the chaotic playthrough and we brushed off pretty rudely, I'm pretty sure. One's Oak, who seems like a good bloke, quite pessimistic though. But then we have this Pete guy, and I guess he's probably, like, you could argue he's like the second biggest character of the game because he's like your sidekick, right? But I just got next to nothing from him, and I feel like it's because he's not a character, but he's a plot device. His whole ploy is like, oh, humans aren't that bad, you can open up to some. You're gonna need, like, we can survive together. There's like messages about, like isolating yourself there. And I feel Pete never goes beyond that plot device for me. I don't know if you felt, indifferent to that.
You're so right. Yeah, you're so right about Pete, because he is basically that voice to Michonne, isn't he? Saying, oh, you don't open up. And he does, to be fair, seem genuinely concerned about Michonne, like especially in that little rowboat scene was they're heading over to the ferry, and he is generally always at your side, like looking out for you and stuff. But as far as the rest of the crew, yeah, I did like Oak. I think it's probably the British bias coming out a little bit. For some reason, just reminded me of Toad from The Wolf Among Us.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Probably it's just that sort of short, squat physique, with like the southeast accent, And then going beyond that, yes, Sadiq and Berto. I mean, I've literally got this written down here, but I'm pretty sure that I was just really cold with him at one point, and he just he just turned around and went, "Oh yeah, because we've all had cushy fucking lives." And then he just walks off, and I'm pretty sure that's the only interaction I ever have with this guy, and then he gets killed off in like a future episode. So yeah, it's just considering that a part of this plot is to care about the crew, what's happened to them and such, and even with the radio sequence at the beginning, like I did do it for laughs, really. Like with the radio, I just turned it off because I didn't really care about Rashid or Vanessa. I was just doing like the Savage playthrough. But I suppose it just sort of speaks, like, ultimately how the game plays out, that you don't really care enough about them, If anything, characters that you meet along the way are a little bit more interesting, and they just fall by the wayside a little bit until they're introduced, like, right at the end. So yeah, I can't say, even after a second time playing this game, that these are names and faces that are just going to live long in the memory for me.
Yeah, I completely agree with that one, mate. And I think that's the problem, because for me, like, Telltale, I would say that the quality definitely dipped over the years. And I feel like when we had previous games like the Walking Dead installments, which, was like where it started for you, right? So it made you fall in love with the genre pretty much. And then we've got like, I don't know, Wolf Among Us and stuff coming out, you know, we're really enjoying them, and then it kind of dips into this sort of quality. And I think this was at a time where they were getting a lot of like titles come in, a lot of sort of signatures and stuff, and then they were producing games much quicker, and you could almost feel the quality of the work dropping because they were perhaps rushed by publishers more, because they were just like producing so many games at that time that the quality just wasn't in them. And I think you can definitely tell when you compare the Walking Dead series that this does fall quite low, because I feel like maybe less heart was in it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, mate. Another talking point I wanted to bring up is, of course, the game's called Michonne, right?
Yes.
And like I said earlier, we do establish the fact that she has some sort of backstory. There's the loss of her daughters. She's clearly plagued by it. And it does come up throughout the episode. She has these visions, doesn't she? And Pete has to pull her back into reality a little bit. So what's your take on that? Like, how well do you think it was executed? Do you think it fleshed her out nicely? Word vomit.
Yeah, because for me, like, you know, I am a fan of The Walking Dead, at least like I used to be. I stopped around season 7. So, like, I came into this, like, knowing who Michonne is. And I know that her whole story is just, like, she's a bit like the lone wolf that comes in, doesn't trust people, and eventually starts to, like, earn the trust of the group. So she's got, like, a really cool arc. And I feel like maybe this game tried to honor like her and like her character so much that they were like, they almost dropped the story kind of by the wayside and the gameplay a little bit as well, you could argue. So yeah, that's kind of like where it falls for me, mate.
And what about like the, you know, when you're playing as Michonne, like with the QTEs and some of the kills, like do you think that they are more impressive than what we see in like the regular seasons or not?
Yeah, you know what, I would, like, because there could be a lot that would make me like sort of not enjoy this game, but there are like these odd glimmers which do sort of make it an okay game, and it like balances it where it falls around the middle. And the combat definitely is one of those strong points, I would say. Like, because I think you mentioned it in your stream, don't you, mate? Like, it's great, isn't it, how it like throws you straight into the action?
Yeah, and like there are moments like throughout the episode, like namely the bit when you're on the ferry, and I think Greg and Sam have like just ambushed you, and then like the walkers all come in, and like you get some like nice beheading kills in there, and there is a couple of kills later on that I won't bring up now, but they're like quite memorable ones that I imagine that if we were to ever do like a Walking Dead, you know, kill or death ranking or something like that, that they would be pretty high up there. But yeah, like overall I think the combat isn't quite bad. I like how like the blood splatter is there on the arrow, like as she moves the machete. And overall, like there is some combat elements in there. It's just that I feel like maybe the balance wasn't quite met. And again, I come back to the length of it, that maybe there wasn't enough of it, or there wasn't enough high stakes moments in there. Like I feel like too much of, not necessarily this episode, I'd say it's potentially the next episode, but there's too much standing around talking, and I think that you needed it to be a little bit more action oriented given the length so far.
No, I do agree, because like I say, that there are good things about this episode, and another good thing as well is the voiceovers. So you know how Randall's the voice of like Mr. Jefferson in Life is Strange, and Norma's the voice of Joyce from Life is Strange, and you could tell they put like a lot of effort in. So there's a lot about this game I really like, but yeah, you're so right. Like we're not at the locations for long enough as well. But like the other thing I want to say as well is like it almost just feels like the locations you're at are so compact. Like, you know, at least in the first game, you know, we could wander around like, you know, like a farm at one point. In this one, we're just like in a little prison cell together. We're on like a boat where we can only walk down the aisle kind of things. And it just feels like a lot of it is just like examine objects in a compact room and have dialogue. And I don't know, I just felt like the balance was slightly off, and they definitely could have just improved this episode to make me more invested.
So I'll move on to the villains next, mate. So I suppose the main villains in this series are Randall and Norma. So what's your take on them? Do they stand up to Carver, for instance, or other villains from the Telltale series?
Yeah, like I like them a lot actually. I do think the brother-sister dynamic's really cool. How one's like the leader, like clearly like the more sort of like thinker, and the other one's kind of a bit more ruthless, like the henchman who's lost control. I do really like that brother dynamic. But I think we go back to your point of the length of the game. It's a little bit awkward, where as we'll learn in later sort of episodes, I don't think their arc ends brilliantly, or like the way they handled them was pretty poor actually. So like it could have been bad, but it's sort of similar to Carver, isn't it? Carver's probably our favourite Telltale villain, and he's just great potential, but just gone too soon. And I think these guys fall in a similar bracket almost.
Yeah, I quite like how they've characterised these two. So you've got not Carver, Randall, who I would say is almost Carver light, because I think, yeah, like you just said, I think Carver is the best Telltale villain. Obviously, rest in peace, Michael Madsen. Like a superb performance there. Randall isn't as convincing, but he is like the heavy of the relationship, isn't he? He's the one who does the shooting, does the killing, and acts before he sort of asks questions and stuff. And then you've got Norma, who you would assume is his superior, obviously like the sister. She's got the more calm head. She likes to talk to the opposition, as it were, and maybe, I mean, even like one of our followers at Fleecy said the more reasonable one, and you can see that, you can see like some of those things in her like whole demeanor. But yeah, I just I come back to the point where Randall, like him being Carver light, that does in essence sum it up for me. I would say though, there is actually one funny bit that I wanted to call out from this episode, and it's the bit where Michonne's tied to a chair, and I think she's talking to Greg or Pete or whatever, and you get a dialogue option, and I can't remember what it was I said now. I think it was like, oh, Michonne, what are we gonna do to help things move forward? And I think I either stayed silent or I just said something not that great, and then Randall comes along and he goes, well, that's the least helpful advice I think I've ever heard. So it's just like the humour of the villain, like you do get those like little glimmers of moments where like the character's able to shine a little bit, besides just being the two-dimensional I'm gonna kill everyone and everything.
So like I want to kind of hark back to like one of our older videos, but like we did like a Telltale like hot take video, didn't we? And one was that like Sam was the greatest female character. Now I remember we had to like both kind of look up, oh, who's Sam Fairbanks again, and we're like, oh yeah, it's the sidekick, or like the girl from Michonne kind of thing. I just kind of wanted your thoughts on the side character, and do you think those like comments were merited, that she's like this really well, or at least someone holds her in like really high regard?
Nah. Don't get me wrong, she's one of the stronger characters in the game, but I don't think that says a lot, because I don't think that there's many strong characters in this game. Dare I even say it? Here's a hot take: Michonne herself. So like, don't get me wrong, like she's not a bad character, but I just don't think, considering she's a title character, that she's like massively strong. Like the nightmare stuff just didn't land with me until right near the end of the game, ironically enough. So that therefore, by comparison, Sam Fairbanks just falls by the wayside a little bit. We do get a little bit more time with her later on, and you get to learn some of her backstory and stuff. But there is just something about this game, and it comes back to the crew, and I suppose we've even touched on it with the villains there, that I don't know, like I just think about previous Walking Dead games. If you was just to say to me, right, list me off some Telltale Walking Dead characters, I wonder how long it's going to be till I get to Walking Dead Michonne. So I feel like I'm going to list off so many characters that we maybe spend less time with in season 1, but for some reason they feel more iconic than the ones you get in Michonne. So yeah, like I don't know. She was probably like a top 3-4 character for me, Sam Fairbanks in Michonne, but I don't think to warrant her being the best female character, not for me.
No, I totally agree. And one thing about this game, to be honest, mate, everything just feels all very watered down, doesn't it? Like there's more watered down gameplay where you can't travel as far in, like, when you're kind of exploring, examining items. Even the characters seem very watered down. The story does as well, and like the length as well, obviously. So it just feels like that quality slipping, and we just like Because I don't know about you, but I just look back at this episode, and I would argue there isn't really a memorable moment for me. Like, it's tough to kind of pick that, like, oomph moment in this episode.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick, it's definitely going to be like the Monroe scenes. But you're so right about the fact it feels like you can't move that much. Like the spaces, I suppose the biggest space that you could argue that you explore is the ferry, isn't it? But most of it's cut scene, and you've got the boat at the start and then the boat at the end, and yeah, like you do feel so restricted in what you can absolutely do in like throughout the episode. So yeah, it does feel watered down. Even like one thing I did want to bring up as well that we have in this episode is like this QTE where you're like sharpening your machete, and I don't know, maybe I should sort of have a more glass half full look on it. But I was thinking to myself, like, what is the point of this? Like, if it was somehow meaningful later on, then sure. But like, I don't know. Like, it just doesn't really do anything for me.
No, I'm with you. You're right. Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry, everyone. If you really like Michonne, then you've probably already left. But you know, it's just one of those things, unfortunately, that there's just things that didn't really land or didn't quite hit the mark, in my opinion.
Like, everything, it was an okay game, right? It's just, I think we all would have preferred if they chose a different sort of thing to give us for like a Walking Dead DLC between season 2 and 3. But yeah, like, you know, it's what makes us honest on the channel. We have to give our legit opinion, and some games aren't always going to be perfect.
This is it. So we're going to wrap the video up there, guys. Is there any bits that we missed that you wanted us to talk about? If so, you know, drop it in the comments. We'll give our opinions and continue the chat there. Otherwise, you've got episode 2 to look forward to. So probably another half hour of us moaning and groaning about Michonne. We'll have to see. We will have to see. But yeah, mate, have you got anything else that you wanted to say before the end?
Not at all. Just thank you very much for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Catch you in the next one.